We can look at company earnings reports and we know that prices are rising. This is literally just indefensible on its face. It's utterly divorced from reality.
You can't lie to people about what's in their wallet, Justin. You can't lie to people about whether or not they're feeling the pain of the economy. You just can't. We have an Inshallah update with Professor Justin Wolfers. You know him, you love him, a University of Michigan economics professor, trying to teach the Trump administration about, facts, numbers, tariffs, the basic stuff that you would think a man who went to Wharton, a really good school, would have learned. But Donald Trump seemingly was partying with Epstein or fell asleep during those pivotal Econ 101 classes. Justin Wolfers has a YouTube channel which he is trying to roll out, and a Substack that you must follow. And he promises you one day he will post on it. But you've seen him on MSNBC, you've seen him on television, trying to break down the numbers. And most importantly, I think for right now, as Americans are truly suffering, as the price of meat is up, the price of food is up, electricity is up, inflation is up. There's right here in Virginia, Justin, there are lines around food banks. I mean, people are really suffering. And Donald Trump is going on Truth Social saying everything's fine, everything's perfect. You're all idiots. This is the greatest economy. He's on Fox News lying, let's just be honest, about the state of the economy. Scott Betson's lying. Mike Johnson's lying. So let's attack Trump's truthiness about the economy and separate fact from Trump's tall tales. Professor, Trump is saying that it's amazing. Prices are down. Inflation is down, the economy is doing great, and it's the radical left that is whining and complaining. That's the top line. Your response to that?
The man campaigned on affordability, and he's governed to raise it, and spoke as if he campaigned on reducing the cost of living. In reality, he's governed to raise it, and he's simply lied and said he's lowered it. There's a really big break. So you and I are used to the president lying. Yes. It's been a relentless thing ever since he walked onto the national stage. He started off by lying about President Obama's birth certificate. He'd lied for years before that. He broke every norm we'd ever seen. The media took years to adjust to understanding it. There has been a break, at least in the part of Trump I follow, which is economics.
Yep.
Which is the break now is we're not even in the same universe. Reality doesn't have to cohere at all with the words the president is using. He's quite literally telling people that prices are falling. Now, there's a million ways in which I know that's false. The one that the viewers know is they go to the grocery store. Prices are not falling. We can be more rigorous about that. The Bureau of Labor Statistics sends people into grocery stores all around the country. Prices are not falling. You could say, are there categories in which they're falling? There are, but not very many. We can look at company earnings reports and we know that prices are rising. This is literally just indefensible on its face. It's utterly divorced from reality. So this break with the truth is harder and sharper and more dramatic than I've ever seen. And it's also one you can't lie to people about. You can lie and say, we get a lot of drones in Ukraine, or I talked to Zelensky or something like that. But this is the realities of people's lived experience. I want to go back. I want to carve something out. The fact that prices are rising is not surprising. Prices rise in economies. That's literally what they do. It's called inflation. In almost all of yours and my adult life, and this is true in almost every country around the world, prices tend to rise. If they rise slowly and not by much, inflation, say 2%, we barely notice it. And you might think that's actually a good outcome. They're actually currently rising at about 3%. There's a really healthy debate. Is 3% acceptable? Some might say yes, some might say no. It's a really good debate. But there's literally no question that prices are rising. And so that's why we're debating.
It's infuriating. It's exasperating because you said something which I've been saying to Mike Madrid, who comes on the show often. He's a founder of the Lincoln Project, a co-founder, excuse me. Been following data for 30 years when it comes to Latino trends. He likes the numbers. And I said to Mike, you can lie. Trump can lie to people about vaccines, sadly. People are like, all right. He can lie to them about the insurrection. People are all right. He can lie to them about climate change. People are all right. You can't lie to people about what's in their wallet, Justin. You can't lie to people about whether or not they're feeling the pain of the economy. You just can't, because you can lie to them and they're like, no, man, I went to the grocery store and it was expensive. The economy is not doing great for me. I'm pinching the pennies. It hurts me. And so with all the metrics and the numbers and the data that you kind of mentioned that we have, it is clear prices are up, inflation's up, and people are in pain. And he says, don't trust your lying eyes, trust me instead. And it's not just him, Justin, which makes it worse. It's also
let's pause on the president. I want to get into it's not just him, because I think that's really important. But I want to point out it's not just prices. So prices are really easy to talk about because we know every one of our audience buys stuff and therefore sees prices. But what's utterly deranged, and it's happening a lot now, I appear on TV and they show me a 30-second clip of the president in which literally every word is false, like made up out of whole cloth. The other one you hear a lot of now is he says, I've brought in $20 trillion worth of investment. Quite literally impossible. The economy only produces 30 trillion in a year. If 20 trillion of it was investment, that means 20 trillion of it is machines and buildings, which means only 10 trillion of it, only 1/3 of our economy is people buying stuff. That's just like literally not true. If all of a sudden you were using less stuff, you'd kind of notice, right? It's literally arithmetically impossible. The president, you ask him where this 20 trillion is, and it's a number that rises day by day with his feelings. There is actually a defense of it on the White House website. It's utterly bizarre. It's indefensible. But then even they'll have a number that'll be like 10 trillion, and then he'll say 17 trillion. The next day he's in a worse mood. He says 18 trillion, then 19 trillion, then 20. This number is literally a figment of his imagination, and it's the central defense of his economic legacy. And then you've got, what if the Supreme Court rules tariffs unconstitutional? He said, we'll have to give trillions back. Who to? No one has paid trillions. They've paid billions. They're really, really different. One is 1/1000th of the other. It's not delusional. It's a complete separation from the truth in a way that, now this is your point, Waj, people around him now repeat.
Yes.
And so the grown-ups, like we went through a first Trump administration and there were grown-ups who restrained his first and worst impulse. But now you've got Mike Johnson yesterday said the cost of living is high because of leftover Democratic policies. Well, who imposed tariffs? Who eliminated much of the agricultural workforce by immigration cutdowns? Who undermined the Fed? Who's halted renewable energy projects? Who's blowing out the deficit? Not a single part of that is Joe Biden. We've got Kevin Hassett, the president's leading economic advisor, on television today saying inflation is down. It's up month after month. He says, you got to like the trajectory. It's up. And I assume, like, there's the parts I don't know. I want to be clear. I don't know what the price of admission into the room with the president is, but as far as I can tell, it's continuing to lie. So how can you have a policy process in which everyone repeats the president's lies back to him? He could only possibly devise policy solutions to problems that don't exist, and he could only possibly miss the actual problems that we have. I am more worried today than I have been in weeks, because it feels like, look, if this were a 27-year-old man, I kind of would be comfortable with the view that his neurons are still working and we'd come up with some sophisticated political story. I worry deeply, and look, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I hate going here, but I worry deeply the guy's neurons just aren't talking to each other anymore.
No, and you're not the only one, right? Because oftentimes when people used to say this, they're like, "Oh, you're suffering from Trump derangement syndrome." But the reality is, number one, he's the oldest person to ever be elected. Not all of our elders, obviously, suffer from dementia. Many people are razor sharp, but he also has a history of dementia in his family. Also, what we've seen, in addition to his lies, which are numerous, he lied, I think, made more than 30,000 false statements in his first administration, Justin. But now what we've seen, especially with the oldest man to ever be elected, especially with the swollen cankles that happens, especially with the blood thinners. Him and Putin now, by the way, share the same discoloration on the arm. He also has gone to Walter Reed twice. He already had his checkup. And so, yeah, I would love the follow-up question. Yo, why did you go again? Or the MRI. Why did they do an MRI? No one seems to ask a follow-up question. And then also, I don't know if you saw, I've been keeping track of this, Justin. He has fallen asleep in nearly every single televised public meeting in the past couple of months. He like literally just falls asleep, passes out. Happened when that gentleman passed out a couple of days ago when he was announcing Ozempic. Him and Dr. Oz were talking about Ozempic, and Donald Trump was knocked out. So here you have an aging person who is a criminal, that's a fact, who is a fraudster, that's a fact, who was held liable for sexual assault, that's a fact, who has a history of lying, that's a fact, and whose family has a history of dementia, that's a fact, who's the oldest person to be elected, that's a fact, who is now brazenly not just lying, but like you said, Justin, just like making shit up. It's like a different reality. And the yes men around him, and a quote, speaking about Mike Johnson, I'll quote him. This is from yesterday. Quote, "That's the reason the inflation is up. The cost of living is up so high because of the policies of the previous administration. Now we're working to root out those policies out and implement our own, but it takes a little time." And that was repeated by Scott Besson. These are not dumb people. So it reminds me, Justin, of that fable that we used to read. The emperor has no clothes, and the emperor is naked and corpulent, and we're supposed to say, "Oh, beautiful robe." But the rest of us clearly can see the emperor has no robe. And unfortunately,
You can't do that to your viewers. You cannot ask them to think about a naked President Trump.
If I thought of it, you have to think of it. These are the rules.
Mate, they're awful rules, and I just want to apologize to all of your subscribers right now for all of that. I want to take a step back. My guess is you and I play somewhat different roles in the public discourse. Your politics are absolutely central, and you virulently hate the guy. I'm not a big fan, but I just
think he's a terrible man who hurts a lot of people.
Right. I work very hard to not talk about the person and to talk about the policies. That's because that's where my expertise lies. So I really don't want to say, is he still there? I have a deep and abiding, I understand that there are parts of the conspiracy theory left that definitely want to say that, and they're absolutely confident. But the truth is, you and I don't know.
We don't know.
And so I'm profoundly resistant to that. But it leaves you and I in a really funny situation. I hope your subscribers have some empathy for us. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're like, well, these guys get to talk all day on TV. That's fun. But I actually do suffer. I want to be really clear. I suffer Trump derangement syndrome. But it's a different variety. My variety is I was raised to believe in the truth. I happen to believe there's a virtue in truth. I could try and defend that to you in lots of ways. If we don't tell each other the truth, how are we going to get to a better economy? If we don't tell each other the truth, how are we going to have sincere human relationships? Blah, 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 blah. I wasn't raised religious, but if I were, lying would be a sin.
Yep.
And so every time I see a lie, it offends something deep inside me. And so the problem right now is there are so many lies so often. What do I do in my public appearances? Do I continue to call them out? I mean, it's boring. The lying liar lied. Is there anything that the world learns when we move from 30,000 lies to 30,001 and then 30,002 and 30,003? I don't know, but I do know it's a very clever trigger, which is he's understood that folks like me are going to start rambling like lunatics because the lies get to us. But I think if you're not living a truth, whatever that means, you're not one of us. The human condition is fundamentally about truth. Our society is organized around it. Our social relations are organized around it. I worry deeply that we have social norms that we tell each other the truth. When just before I got on, I said to Waj, I'm having a bad hair day. He said, yes.
I did not say that, but I would have probably said yes. I said he looks like a 1990s hip hop band member, and I would have bought his album.
That's actually what Waj said. And do you see how truth is such a vital organizing principle? Your audience only finds it useful if we're telling each other truths.
Yeah.
I'm stuck. I'm lost. I don't know what to do next. If people want to scream in the comments and give me genuine advice, but I want you to go a step further than to say, if it's untrue, call it out, because yes, that serves a political purpose. But what do you do with someone who walks into a system that's fundamentally about truth and then just lies relentlessly? And then here's the other thing I worry about. The virtue of truth-telling is dead. Scott Bessent looks down the camera and lies. That was not how he was raised, I'm guessing. Kevin Hassett does the same. Mike Johnson, who I genuinely believe is a sincere evangelical Christian and probably does believe lying is a sin. Truth has become devalued.
Yep.
That has consequences well beyond the stuff that you and I normally talk about of GDP and unemployment and inflation and all of that. It's who we are, what we are, how does society work. But also, in a world in which we lie to each other, we also, now I'll bring it back to where I'm an expert, economics. In a world in which we lie, we can't do business with each other. You can't send me an email, as you did, Wash, and say, can you join me at 1 o'clock? Because I'll say yes, and then not turn up. And then your subscribers turn up and you've got no guest. Nothing works if we don't tell each other the truth.
It destroys relationships. It's all based on faith, trust, right? If you go to think about this. It's a profound point. When you go to a restaurant and let's just say you go to a coffee shop, you have some implicit trust that the barista is not going to spit in your coffee cup. You pay them the money, you treat them well, they make your coffee, they don't lace it with poison. You say thank you and you leave. Trust, right? So many of our interactions, so many of our daily interactions that we take for granted are based on this implicit notion of human trust, that the other person is not lying to me. I'm not lying to them. We're engaging in a fair transaction. I'm not screwing them. They're not screwing me. There's no fraud. You take that to the upper levels now, Justin, where the world's most powerful man, arguably Donald Trump, is aggressively, deliberately, intentionally lying about something that is fundamentally key and important to not just Americans, but the world, the economy, the prices, cost of living, inflation. And as you know, America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. It has a profound consequence, not just on how the rest of the world sees us as America, as a country to be trusted, but your fellow Americans are trying to get by, and they're like, well, the president told me renewable energy is terrible, so I need to sleep with this lump of coal. Justin, the president told me, he said it, that Tylenol, which I've been using for 40 years to treat my headaches, might just give my baby and my wife's child autism. I can't use it. I mean, who do I trust, Justin? Who do I trust? And so I think we have this profound. I appreciate you talking about this because we don't talk about it often, right? We sit there and go, Trump lied, Trump lied, Trump lied. And then Daniel Dale on CNN comes in and fact checks and almost passes out. But what he has done is just destroyed this fundamental aspect of trust that we have in our government and how the rest of the world treats America. And let's talk about that for a second. Because
Actually, let me pause on this because this is cool. I want to bring you back to a moment that I had. I had to fill out my tax forms. When April 15 comes up and you got to fill out those terrible forms and they're awful. And you may not think about it, but actually our entire tax system relies a lot on trust and norms. And I was sitting there on the form and I was like, for sure they know my income, but I could say like I bought 4 new computers and make them tax deductible and lower my tax bill. And yes, if I were ever audited, they could demand the receipts. And if I didn't have them, ... So there was this moment, should I tell the truth on the tax form? And I swear to God, I thought, I know the president doesn't pay taxes. I'm pretty sure he doesn't tell the truth. And I thought, why am I the only idiot here who's telling the truth? And I have a funny feeling. I tell that story not to admit to tax fraud, which I didn't do. But because I have a funny feeling that many people in your audience recognize that moment with themselves. And if that's the case, if those norms are so thoroughly broken, the only way you can get someone to pay tax would be by having the government really, 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 really in everyone's business. If every transaction is tracked across the economy in ways that I think many of my right-leaning friends would find particularly uncomfortable. And then I want to take that moment. I saw someone in the comments already say, hey, I had that thought too, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we find a bunch of us are having that thought on tax day, what about on everything else? Waj, maybe we're going to get together for a barbecue this weekend. We're not, we live in different cities, but maybe we are. And then you hear me cough and you say, hey, Justin, is that COVID? If I just want to have my buddy Waj over and I don't want any chance that he doesn't say no, I'll say, no, it's not, mate. Come on over. And I cough all over you and you go and get sick. His moments, this ability, I apologize. I think I might be repeating myself. Truth is fundamental social glue, and without it, I worry deeply about both economic, social, and political life.
No, and how people are repeating the behavior, the lack of ethics of the leader. I think people underestimate that the president of the United States, despite if you like him, don't like him, vote for him, don't vote for him, even though he's a clown, it's a revered position. And when the president comes out and comes out with experts and gives a press conference and lies about Tylenol, yes, maybe this audience might be like, oh, he's lying. But you forget that so many people, folks, they're just, they're trying to get by. And they're like, well, why would the commander in chief, the president, lie about that? He must have said something true. And now, based upon that lie to devalue, I don't know. I mean, I don't know his intentions for doing that. We can all guess. None of them noble. But by doing that, now people, having put faith and trust in the president, have harmed themselves. And so it is a corrosive. The man is so corrosive. And I remember, to your point, Justin, he said that the people who pay taxes, right, and people who follow the system are suckers. And he, in fact, remember that in 2016 when he was running, he goes, I gamed the system. The system's corrupt. Y'all are suckers. And people are like, yeah, he's right. The system is corrupt. He's an outsider. Good for him. And so now no one's paying taxes. The federal government has less money and everything is privatized and we're screwed. But let's talk.
Waj, I'm going to hijack your podcast now. Can I do that?
Please, go ahead. Go for it.
So you'll take this the right way. You're complaining a lot.
Yes, I whine. I'm a whiner.
There's a lot to complain about, right? But there's nothing new or interesting about complaining about the president. I've been to many liberal dinner parties, and this is what we do. And then we get to dessert, and then we all say, I can't wait till it's over. I want to ask you a constructive question. How should public intellectuals, you, me, other people who are watching, what can we do? What should we do? What's constructive? How do you think about this? How do we change the discourse? I want to move from yes, this is annoying. Everyone in our audience knows that. How do we report?
I think it is important. So threading the line. If indeed truth is important, and I believe you and I believe truth is important, facts matter. We have to trust the evidence of our eyes and ears even when they make us uncomfortable, even when they the facts and the evidence might disturb us based upon our morals, our ethics, our values, what have you. I think it is imperative when you're surrounded by an echo chamber of lives that you be the beacon of truth, meaning that even if you have a small podcast or a Substack, you bring the receipts, you bring the evidence. Mm-hmm. I think it's very important, even though it's exhausting. Even though you might feel like you're the one person paying taxes and everyone else a fraudster, you have to be the example, number one. So I do think the exercise of refuting the lies, but then doubling down, the truth sandwich, if you will. Lead with the truth, call out the lie, finish off with the truth. The truth sandwich is the best delivery system, because if you simply repeat the lie and debunk it, now you do it both sides, people are confused. But I think it's important, and that's why I have experts like you. Truth. Here's what Trump is saying, why it's a lie, truth. You give a truth sandwich to people and they go, oh, that makes sense. Okay, now you've inoculated at least the audience that's listening. You've inoculated them. Let's just use the vaccines. All right.
I love this. I just learned something from you. So one of us is going to practice the truth. I'm serious here. I do improv in my spare time. We practice getting better at things. So Either I'm going to ask you to deliver a truth sandwich or you're going to ask me. Which do you want? I want to
I
practice.
want to ask you because you're the professor and I'm just the
Great.
person who has the minivan.
We both have minivans, man.
But you have an esteemed position as a professor. I'm just a professor in my head. The give me the truth sandwich about the current state of the U.S. economy, and well, specifically, I'll make it even more specific.
Yep.
Give me a truth sandwich about the success or lack of success of Donald Trump's trade wars and tariff policy.
Okay. The truth is, we are in a better position this week than we were last week because the president went to, well, this week than last month because the president went to China and sawed off some of the rough edges. But we're in a worse position than we were before Trump started. The lie, the president says we're better off because of tariffs. The truth is Americans are paying every dollar of those tariffs, and our position in the world has fallen dramatically. And the rest of the world is looking for more reliable friends, and they're finding them. I don't think I nailed it.
No, it's good. And I think you're almost there. Give me another layer. Let's make it a Reuben truth sandwich to finish it off. Tariffs. What are they? Do they help or do they hurt economies?
Love it. Thank you. I can do that. So actually, let me explain to the audience why I was struggling. When you ask a question like, is the economy doing well? The reality is every person does have a different reality. Your family might be, mine might not be. The reality is we all have different values. Some people care a lot about inequality, some people don't. And so putting that in the frame of truth is hard. Now, is GDP rising? Yes, the truth is it is. Is unemployment rising? Yes, the truth is it is. Is inflation higher than the Fed wants? Yes, the truth is that it's higher than the Fed wants. So the more precise we are, the more we move from subjective evaluation to where I'm expert, which is truth. So you said, what is a tariff and do they help? Okay. The truth is, a tariff is literally by definition a tax on imports. That tariff means that when an American brings a good into the country, in order for that good to get out of customs, the American has to pay for it. The lie is China's paying for this. The truth is it's complicated, but we can still figure this out. It's complicated because it could be, in order to keep my business, China offers me a little bit of a discount, and then I still pay the tariff, but I come out okay. That could happen. But the reality is we see that China is not offering that discount, which is to say that currently Americans are paying almost all of the costs of these tariffs. How'd I do?
That was very good. That was very helpful. Very good. Explains to me, a layman, an English major, why the Liberation Day has not liberated us. And furthermore, based upon that, because we live in the world, right? And you talked about China. So here's my follow-up to you. Donald Trump has alleged that his Liberation Day aggressive trade war and tariff policy will then make America great again because these countries that are allegedly quote screwing us will fall in line. Has that happened, Justin?
Right. An important truth and widely misunderstood truth is before Trump came to power, most countries around the world had very, very low tariffs, including on American goods. So Trump was looking to fight a war against an enemy that didn't exist. So when Trump was young, other countries had high tariffs, keeping American goods out. That's where he got this story. But the reality is, if you take a look at any serious statistics, no one has been tariffing the United States by more than a few percentage points in several decades. You can immediately see how this is asymmetric warfare, which is even if we win only a little bit. And if we lose, we stand to lose a lot. So this was a mistake from the past, from absolutely from the outset. So I'm going to try and do the sandwich. Okay, so Trump has said trade wars are easy to win and we have a lot to gain here. The truth is we never had much to gain. And as we've learned over the last 10 months, trade wars are certainly not easy to win. The reason for that is our trading partners have options. If we're not reliable, they can go elsewhere. That's what's happening right now, and that's going to bite American consumers and companies on the bum.
Have you followed what's happening with the soy market and soy farmers, and specifically China? I mean, I think that's just a great example.
Yeah, actually, there's a really interesting story about this. So, what happened was the Chinese had us by the short and curlies, where Trump was bellowing and amplifying the trade war with China. They just said, apart from we're going to cut you off from rare earth minerals, they said we're going to stop buying soybeans. It turns out China is one of the world's largest buyers of soybeans, so it's not like we can easily sell them elsewhere. So Trump goes over to China, so I think he went to Korea, and meets with the Chinese, and they strike a new deal. And the deal is that the truce that they previously agreed to, they agreed that they still agreed to it. And Trump got a talking point. The talking point was that the Chinese have agreed that they're going to buy American soybeans again. Now, it turns out the quantity of soybeans that the Chinese agreed to buy from the United States was actually far less than they bought in any time in recent history, and far less than we would have sold them if Trump had never been elected president. So actually, he ended up getting us a commitment to buy fewer soybeans than they were previously buying, which is to say a worthless commitment. And here's where it gets even more interesting. And President Trump did the same thing in 2018. In 2018, he went to China and he actually got commitments to buy more soybeans. And guess what happened? They didn't live up to any of them. They said, we promise we will buy more American soybeans and more American products, more generally. They set specific quantitative targets for the next 2 years, and they basically came in with no increase in spending whatsoever. So they lived up to 0.0% of their deal. And it's because these deals are sort of nonsense on their face. They're not properly structured. They're not properly written. They don't go through Congress. They don't, so he gets the talking point and there's no follow through and the American people get nothing. That's literally what's happened with soybeans in the past. This time they've made the commitment. They'll live up to the commitment for sure because the commitment's so minor. And I think the problem is that the number of people with economic literacy to understand. I mean, my guess is that you wish you never talked about soybeans. And I will tell you, I did not study economics so I could talk about soybeans. It's actually kind of boring. But I've had to learn enough to keep track of what the administration's doing. And the answer is it's doing far less than meets the eye.
And the reason why I have to learn about soybeans is because despite this Schadenfreude of saying, told you so, soy farmers who voted for Trump, I'm still not a sociopath. And I've been following stories of these soy farmers, American soy farmers, who are openly now saying is we don't want a bailout. We just want the usual trade with China. But China now, as a result of the trade war engineered by Trump, is buying all the soy from Argentina and Brazil. We're getting decimated. They're literally, folks, they're so desperate. Some of them are suicidal. They're so desperate. Some of them literally have resorted to just praying. They're like, all we do is just pray. We go to church and we pray. And because I'm not a sociopath and because I don't need people to suffer to feel great again, I'm looking at the plight of soy farmers as one of the many examples, Justin, of this economy, this alleged booming economy, harming Americans unnecessarily, right? Like Donald Trump's policies unnecessarily, recklessly harming people. And speaking about the harm, the flip side.
Can I pick up on this? I just want to give the audience just a very simple trick you can always use to make sense of the news. So there's an old script where Trump screws something up and then goes back and makes it slightly less bad. And on that second day, when he makes it slightly less bad, the press understands that screw up is its new baseline. And now it says, look what Trump did relative to where we were yesterday.
Yeah.
Things got better. And so this very simple trick is any policy issue you ever debate around the Thanksgiving table or whatever your metaphorical equivalent is, compare that policy domain with 2024. Because there's almost nothing that got better. The rest is getting caught up in the noise and getting caught up in the moment. The question is, are we better off than we were? And the answer on most of these policy questions turns out to be no. And this is the simplest trick to clarify what's going on, because the ins and outs and the ups and downs of soybeans has been brutal. But if you simply say, in late 2024, I knew nothing about soybeans. That was amazing because soybean farmers could just sell their soybeans. In late 2024, I knew nothing about rare earth minerals because when you wanted them, you just got them. Life was simpler. And so in every one of these dimensions, life got more complicated and complicated worse.
Yeah, I didn't know about trade wars. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right. I used to teach about tariffs, but you didn't. And it's because no one was trying to screw up your economy with tariffs, right? And Wasn't that beautiful when you could walk around I'm going to tease you now, as an ignorant English major,
Correct.
feeling you understood the questions of the day? And I would love to go back to that. I would love to go back to a world in which we're all part of the conversation and they're about important and big issues rather than self-created crises.
Yeah, I'm sure you would love to go on television and say, "Hey, listen, the wages are rising, billionaires are paying their fair share, everyone is much happier, America is much more affordable, we've risen in esteem and status with the world. Here's a new trade deal that actually might help a sector that's been harmed. This is great." I mean, I'm sure that's a great story. You could talk about that on TV. I think I would love that story, Justin. But the reality is, in the past year, less than a year that this administration has come into power, and I think that's very important to do a compare and contrast because you have to give people a baseline, right? And you can't just give Donald Trump like, well, I didn't burn down the entire house. I saved the kitchen. Well done, sir. Well done. You saved the kitchen. Wait, weren't you the one who burned down the house? Shut up. It was Biden. We have to do a compare and contrast where top of the head, the facts that I know is the US dollar has devalued a bit. The U.S. brand, yes, folks, the United States has a brand. With Biden, as he was leaving, it was plus 15. Now Justin's negative 3.5.
Look at you with the numbers. Who
Yeah, look
said
at
you
it.
can't do numbers?
Our trade partners are openly saying, well, okay, if you're aggressively going to antagonize us, all right, well, European countries are going to China. As far as our expert scientists, many of them immigrants like yourself who came here, they're being poached aggressively by China, Japan, Europe, because we've cut NIH, we've cut HHS. We're not allowing immigrants to come in. Foreign students have dropped. When it comes to tourism, I think we're projected to lose $49 billion. Again, as an English major, top of the head, just looking at these several examples, Justin, that to me that's not good. That's not good for a country. We're not stronger. It seems that we're weaker. And yet Donald Trump comes out and says, we're much stronger, we're much stronger, much stronger. And to both sides, to be fair, one of the factors that they point to aggressively is like, look at the stock market. So I have to ask you, since you're the professor and stocks still scare me. They're like, look at the stock market, look at AI, we're thriving. This is a sign of American strength. Professor, your response.
I have a feeling you know my answer. I tweeted a chart recently, which is great because the number of times I've been on television where people have said, Justin, people like you have said that the economy wouldn't do well under Trump, but the American stock market is absolutely booming. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. So what I went and did was I collected stock market data for every major developed country. So in the US, since inauguration day, the American stock market's up 13%. In US dollar terms, Spain's up 61, Austria 58, Finland 45, Ireland 42, Hong Kong 41, Italy 39, Portugal 35, Belgium 33, Singapore 29. I want to remind you, America's 13, so 29's more than double that. Japan 29%, United Kingdom's up 27, the Netherlands 27, Canada 24%, even though we've inflicted a whole lot of pain on them. Germany's up 24%, Sweden's up 23%, Switzerland's up 21%, Israel's up 20%, despite everything that's going on over there. France is up 19%, Norway's up 15%. In fact, there's only 3 major developed countries where the American stock market's outperformed. One of them is Denmark. The entire Danish stock market, nearly about 40% of the Danish stock market is Novo Nordisk. So it's literally just about its drugs, right? So that's really a one-off. And then Australia's up 11% compared to the US, which is up 13%. And the only other country we beat is New Zealand. And as an Australian, let me tell you, no one cares about New Zealand and everyone can beat them. We hate them. The point is...
The bias always comes out, but I love it.
Absolutely. It's Boston, New York.
Yeah.
So I said a lot of numbers out loud. Let me come back and just emphasize this. So I think I listed about 20 countries, and the US is only beating 3, one of whom is basically just Novo Nordisk. So the stock market tells you that there is optimism about the global economy. There's less of it here than anywhere else.
And then I don't know if you saw this 2 hours ago. Goldman Sachs says the U.S. likely lost 50,000 jobs in October. Every time you come on, we talk about the job market, and whatever data we have left, we had reliable data thanks to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And about in the summer, numbers came out that showed some not so good numbers about job losses and lack of job growth. And what Donald Trump did is he fired Dr. McAntifer, who was the head of Bureau and Labor Statistics, and put in, if I remember his name correctly, E.J. Antonini, who was a January 6th insurrectionist who had Hitler's favorite naval ship as his Zoom background, as one does. But in addition to that, completely unqualified. So now we really can't trust the numbers, so we kind of have to ad hoc get information. But Goldman Sachs just came out with this.
I'm gonna stay wedded to the facts. So I'm gonna help you here.
Yeah.
The president nominated Antony. Antony couldn't get through the Senate. And so despite being a moron, the president wanted to stick with him, but he ended up rejecting him. So the BLS has only an acting commissioner right now. The real problem right now is we are still in the midst of a government shutdown, which means we have no data. What we do know is that prior to the shutdown, the economy was slowing. What we don't know if it's slowed to the point where it's going backward. Hopefully in a month or so, we'll get some more reliable data, but it's going to take us a while to sort all of this out.
But all this data isn't looking good, right, Professor? I mean, look, we can only see what we know. I mean, based on what we see, but I have not seen any number from any third-party outlet, or rather a source which is not the U.S. government or BLS, that shows job growth has picked up. Oh, private sector is really hiring. If you've seen it, you let me know. You're the expert.
There are so many data series that are released on the state of the economy that some of them point north and some of them point south. I want to just be as open and direct as I can. Some of them are looking stronger than we'd ever anticipated. GDP is one. Some of them are looking weaker than we'd hoped. The unemployment rate has been rising now for a couple of years. So I don't want to talk the economy down. I want to say different people bring different ways of looking at the economy, and different people value different parts of the economy. So if you wanted to tell a glass half full story, you can. Inflation is lower than it was during the COVID pandemic, for instance. Unemployment, while it's rising, is still low. So, I want to take the heat out of this conversation and just say it's really hard to know. I am worried. And the other thing is, we know there's a vast source of data in which the surveys asking people how they feel about the economy.
Yeah.
And we know for sure that you're worried and I'm worried. And in fact, so are most of the American people. A recent survey, it's been running now for 50 years, University of Michigan survey, which asked whether you believe that the quality of economic policy coming from the federal government is poor. That's now at an all-time high. It's at about, I think, 61%. So people feel the economy is being mismanaged. Yet equally, the worst of the predictions that, everything would go to shit straight away clearly haven't happened. Our economy is still functioning. You have a job. I have a job. So it's, I want to just call it a somewhat more mixed bag.
Can you, bringing back to faith, and I'm just very curious how that impacts the economy. If there's a correlation, faith in the economy goes a long way. Faith in the dollar goes a long way. And looking at the surveys and the data, everything that I've seen so far shows that young people in particular, but now also a majority, have less faith in the United States economy, have less faith in their economic future, have less faith in economic success, have less faith that things will get better for them, especially young people. It's very depressing. How does that translate to the strength and status of a U.S. economy, if at all?
Right. Okay, so let me first of all connect this to the last question, which is I think people's confidence about our economic future is remarkably weak, even if the reality is not yet that weak. That would be sort of how I would summarize everything.
Yeah.
How important is this? Good question. And there are dozens of economists who've written long dissertations about this. You can squint some ways and it matters, and you can squint other ways and it doesn't. But here's where we think it probably really matters. If you're going to break ground on a new factory, you have to be really confident there's going to be a market for your goods at the end. You have to be confident that you'll be able to get the inputs that you need. You have to be confident that the government will not just arbitrarily take 10% of your company, as it may have done to Intel. And so expectations, we think, really matter for, in particular, investment. And so that's something to keep your eye on very, very, very closely. The other thing is there's expectations and there's expectations. They sound the same. There's short run stuff like, do I think the economy is strong enough, so I should go and invest in this? There's a deeper question, which is, do I think that the rules of the game are stable and are going to be stable in a way that means that if I invest, I will get to enjoy the rewards of my investment? That's a very different sense. And that's where we rely on things like the rule of law and contract enforcement and a sense that we have an ongoing and stable democracy. Those things really, really matter. They don't matter for next quarter's GDP, but what they matter for is the sorts of plans that will play out over 1 or 2 decades. Is this a country I want to be doing business in? What you see right now is in every boardroom around the country, they're talking about the president's desires more than they ever have in the past. So pleasing the president rather than pleasing the customers has become a lot more important. That makes the US a much harder investment. These are the sorts of concerns that I have that might actually be much, much larger than will next year's GDP be high or low. These are the sorts of things that could really slow down economic growth quite dramatically. To give you an example, I saw a study earlier this morning that looked at the effects of Brexit on the United Kingdom. No place in Europe has been growing particularly well. But even so, England, the United Kingdom, has been growing worse than most of the rest of Europe. We don't know that it's Brexit, but Brexit was an attempt to take a dynamic, outward-facing economy and make it its own island, its own fortress, and cut itself off from its trading partners. Does that feel like it might be relevant for the United States? Because right now, the English economy has grown 6 to 8% less than its peer economies. That's a pretty substantial hit. And if you think that the Trump shock is bigger than the Brexit shock, you might think that, I happen to, then you think that the stakes in this fight are much, much larger than next quarter's GDP.
I remember when Brexit was happening, there was a vote. I happened to be traveling, and I remember exactly where I was. I had a layover in Istanbul, and I went to the Turkish airport, and by the time I landed, I said, oh, surely the British people, I know it's going to be close, but they won't punch themselves in the face, Justin. 52-48, 51-49. And then I land. I remember, I'll never forget this. I go to I had a lounge. Someone invited me. So I'm a simple English major.
Oh, Mr. Fancy in the lounge.
They treated me well. They treated me well. I didn't pay for it. Of course not. So I go to the lounge and I open up my phone and I see that Brexit passes, and I was like, wow. And I just imagine a person punching themselves in the face repeatedly saying, I feel great. And the rest of us saying, please don't do that. And I thought, wow, I hope the rest of us learn. I hope the rest of the world says, you know what? They just literally fell off a cliff. And then America said, hold my Diet Coke. And speaking of that, I have to ask you this because speaking of, pleasing a man who... let's just say is reckless, Donald Trump, and proposes some wild ideas and how that harms the economy and our allies. Donald Trump has proposed a 50-year mortgage. Sir, your response to the 50-year mortgage?
Let me pass on that for the moment. The truth is I'm just trying to think about it. So what I want to do is go away, have a deep think, and come back and give you a really good answer.
All right, I like that. How about the rebates? Have you thought about this rebates idea?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I have. This one I'm going to answer. Okay. So the president recognizes that people are hurting because of tariffs. So he says, what we're going to do is issue a $2,000 rebate check to all Americans, and then says in parentheses, except the rich ones, to help make up for the costs of the tariffs. Okay. So I want you to realize now what he's doing. He's got the government imposing taxes with one hand and then picking up that money, putting it in the other hand and giving it back to people. So on average, the money's just making a round trip. Remember when Republicans were against taxes? They were against taxes because they think that taxes distort the economy. To give a simple example, if you have a very high income tax, there's less reason to earn more income, and so people might not work as hard. Well, that same logic goes for tariffs, because now my money doesn't buy as many foreign goods. And so therefore there's less reason for me to work hard or to get a promotion and so on. So the exact same logic that says we hate income taxes should lead them to hate tariffs. And there's extra reasons to hate tariffs as well. And so rather than taking money with one hand and giving it back with the other and imposing all those costs, you could just not take it. It would be much simpler. If you want to eliminate the pain caused by tariffs, don't charge tariffs. It's just blindingly simple. I mean, I don't know if anyone in the White House has heard this policy proposal, but it is my top secret policy proposal. If you don't like the damage tariffs are doing, don't do tariffs. Now, that's the first order answer. But then we can go back a step, and it's a little bit related to our earlier discussion about truth. The president has said, well, we're taking in so much money, I can afford to give everyone $2,000, and then I'll use the rest of the money to pay back the debt. Here's the problem. Waj, let's do some arithmetic together. How many Americans are there?
340 million.
You are so good at this. Okay, so should we say the top 10% are too rich? We're not going to give them a rebate, right?
Right.
Let's call 10% 40 million, so we're down to 300 million. So we're rounding, right?
Okay.
Okay, let's give 300 million people $2,000. Now, I understand that's going to be too hard for an English major. But if you multiply 300...
60 million?
No, see, that's the English major.
No, 300 million. Oh, 6.2 million.
No, very bad answer. 600 billion. 600 billion.
English major, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a reason I do this for a living. And by the way, to the viewers, doing orders of magnitude calculations in your head is very, very hard. So don't be tough on Waj. I'm totally serious. It's a very hard job to do.
No, you could be totally tough on me. My math was atrocious. I didn't even know where I said 6.2. So you could shame me. It's good.
No, point is, it's going to cost $600 billion just based on our quick thing. How much money are we going to bring in tariff revenue this year? Maybe 250. So now what he's doing is he's talking about taking in a moderate amount of money and sending out twice as much money. Now even an English major knows what that does to the budget deficit and knows, which is to say it's going to raise the budget deficit at exactly the wrong moment. And he said, I'm going to use the leftover to pay down the debt. Well, actually what it's going to do is raise the national debt. The point here is not the president's innumeracy. The point is the president's dishonesty. The truth is, doing the sort of math we just did isn't easy. And fortunately, you and I, through our taxes, pay for the president to be surrounded by economists. There exists an Excel spreadsheet inside the White House. They can figure this out. But they have no attachment to reality. And the reality is this is spending more money than we're taking in, and they're lying to us. And I think most of them understand that they're lying to us. Let me give you one other hint that I think everyone should always ask. Anytime you hear one of these cockamamie ideas, simply say, where is the analysis of this plan? A very simple question, because if it's a serious plan, I'm sure you ask a bunch of nerds to write a few pages about it, and they've costed it, and they've talked about the alternatives and the ups and the downsides. And that's the way we used to do economic policy. You would come up with an idea, and then you would go out and try and win the battle of ideas. You would explain the logic. You'd show the logic because the logic is so good. You're so excited to explain why this works. You'd release a 30-page paper that digs into it, and nerds like me would read it. So where's the paper trail? Where's the analysis? And the answer is there is none. Why is there none? Because it's not a serious policy proposal. This is presidenting by tweet. There's lots of problems here, including the idea that a 79-year-old man with a tenuous grasp on economics, let alone reality, probably isn't thinking about all the economic consequences. Look, of course a nerd like me is going to say it's important to have nerds involved in policy discussion, right? Let's move beyond that. Let's just say policy discussion should be reflective and thoughtful. That's all I want to say. And so there is a threshold test for me. Was this a result of a reflective, thoughtful policy process? If it wasn't, then it's probably bullshit. And the thing is, almost every single one of his policies, if you ask for the work, can I see the homework? They didn't do any. And we know what happens when you don't do homework. You do low quality work. The problem is, it's not that the president's going to get yet another C. The problem is that this will hurt people. It will shape their lives, and it will mean there's less there, fewer resources, more families going hungry, more kids making do, fewer people without jobs, people losing dignity in their way of life, and things that are really important. So that threshold question, remember I taught you one trick is always say, how are we relative to the end of 2024? The other trick is show me the work.
Show me the work. And this is policy not by tweet. This is literally, folks, and I say this without any hyperbole, literally the way we used the word in the 80s and 90s. This is policy by late night truth social post. A person just throwing it out there. Let's do this. And they're like, excuse me? Why are you saying this? Because have you done the analysis? Can you show us the data of how this will work? No, do it. You're like, oh, okay. If it was an old man yelling at the clouds, you could just say, "Oh, that's our resident old man yelling at the clouds." Ignore him. This is the president of the United States of America, folks. So with the 50-year mortgage proposal, let's see. Hopefully he forgets about it. Other people do as well. If not, I'll have Justin back. But final question for you, Justin. Um, looking at the data, and of course, I can't ask you to be Nostradamus, and I won't. You have to be, in your role as an economist, as a professor, you have to be, if you will, a bit more conservative, not necessarily in your politics, but in your outlook. You can't, willy nilly make predictions. But looking at the state of the country right now, and looking at the data that we have, um, if you say could interject and get the president's ear. And apparently, the president is always most receptive to the person who last talks to them. And as an economist, you say, "Sir, respectfully, you're the president of the United States. I see your economic policies. I know you want to make America great again. Uh, I would offer these small course corrections that could actually help you implement your desired goal based on what you've done so far." What would you tell him?
It would actually be a step back from economic policy, which would be to say, could you implement a serious economic policy process? That when you have an idea, I think it's terrific, Mr. President, and then we'll bring in a bunch of nerds to see if we can polish it and make it just right, that we can do the analysis, that we can talk to interested parties and affected groups, that we can make it a little more successful. That will sound utterly inane to many of your audience, but so much of what we've got going on right now, first of all, is tremendous uncertainty out there. Businesses are finding it hard to plan ahead because whatever's true on Monday is no longer true on Tuesday. And secondly, there's immense fear among the business community that the competence of the American government is low. So there's a crisis of confidence in the competence of the administration. Are you willing to invest in a country if you can't be sure it's going to be seriously and well run? And so ameliorating those concerns. So, things like, let's tweet out 100% tariff against China on Friday, and then by Sunday, just say, just kidding. Nothing was gained by that. So what I want you to do is just send it out to your nerds. I volunteer to be one of the nerds. And just let them chew it over and send it back to you. And they'll get back to you and they'd say, I think that starting a trade war with China is probably a bad idea. So let's not do it on Friday and back down on Sunday. Let's actually just not do the discussion. Let's look 3 days ahead. It's so elementary. It's just standard governing. That you don't need an economist to tell you this. This is normally what political scientists talk about, which is how do you govern in a coherent, successful way? It's like, how do you manage? How do you manage an organization like the US economy? And the answer is thoughtfully. And I would want to add the thought back into that.
Yeah. Well, good luck. It's a well-intentioned. We can at least dream. Folks, I've been talking to Justin Wolfers. He is an economics professor at the University of Michigan. He's written several books. One of them is right behind you. For a layman like me who can't add, he can help you understand the principle of economics, and you can also see him on television. Oftentimes, he's now the go-to economics professor to help us lay people understand what's happening. He also has a Substack that one day, inshallah, he will use, maybe, perhaps. And he has a YouTube channel, which will have this conversation. That's at what? At Justin Wolfers?
At Justin Wolfers, brother.
All right, I'm going to have this up on the left hook. I'm a terrible capitalist, as Justin has figured out, so I've kept everything for free, much to the pain and chagrin of my immigrant parents who are like, why? Why have you done this? Because I believe people should be informed. So if you have some money, buy Justin's book. If you have a few dollars left over, become a paid subscriber to the Left Hook, please. It goes a long way. You can help feed one of my 3 kids or half of my 800 children that I have. Justin, for those who joined us late, about 1,500 people, we're going to have this entire conversation up where we give you truth sandwiches, folks. It's not enough just to say Trump is lying. I sincerely believe that people who do that are only doing half the job. And I think with the best of intentions, they're doing a disservice. You have to give people the reality and then debunk the lie and then give them reality again. I think that's the only way to make it digestible. My take on it, it seems to have worked for most people when you give them a truth sandwich. And as far as the truth sandwich is concerned, you see Justin wearing the headphones. His previous career was as a rapper in Australia, writing diss track against Kiwis in New Zealand. Yeah, yeah, a lot of diss tracks. You want to see? You seem like a nice guy, but wait when you bring out New Zealand. Oh my God, that's when the f bombs drop. Do you have to? Are you genetically predisposed to always rooting for Australian rugby teams and cricket teams, especially against New Zealand?
It's only because I believe in truth and beauty and higher things.
I like that. I'll end on this. In my college days, UC Berkeley, Australia versus Pakistan in cricket. And my psychology professor, who was supposed to be, professor is supposed to be like balanced and fair. Nope. Found out I was Pakistani, just talked immense shit before the match and then after the match, after Australia won. And I just had to take it for the entire semester. But one day, revenge shall be ours. Folks, this is Justin Wolfers. Thank you all for watching. This has been the Left Hook. Be informed, be kind, and please, oh please, don't be a fascist. Thank you, Justin. Until
Take
next
care.
time, buddy. Bye bye.